and this is TinyTableGames. Today I'll be playing and talking about and kind of reviewing Penny Dreadful, which is a real interesting game, I guess. I have a lot to say about this one, so let's get to it and I'll walk you through what I think and how it plays.
So, what's in the box? Well, there's this board, which is quite generic, but that's by design. It basically just has a bunch of numbers and letters indicating generic city blocks, which seems weird, except that each scenario you play with this, and clearly they intended it in the long term, to be just a genericized board where you can say, place the warehouse in location 12, place, Baker Street or whatever on spot 5, that sort of thing. Place the London Times in square 7. And then little roads and connecting points and little connectors between locations are all intended to basically let you build a map for each scenario. Each scenario is built independently entirely, different stories, very much a choose your own adventure. In fact, a lot of this game should just be a choose your own adventure. But you've got this board, which if you ever played the old Infocom adventure games or something like that way back in the day, where you had to draw your own maps, that's kind of what that effectively does. So then you've got a whole bunch of different tokens for locations, both indoor locations and outdoor locations. Indoors are the more brown ones and the outdoor ones are the more goldish ones, like a market, a shop, a bank, all sorts of stuff. Monuments, bridges, with various, 18th century looking British artwork, so to speak. And even more tokens, ports, castles, agencies, master bedrooms, guest rooms. So you can build your own clue board, if you will, for every scenario or several times during a scenario. These tokens over here are strictly if you're playing one player or two player, which I'll get to why that matters. And then you've got randomized Greek letter tokens, which are used to represent various things in the game. The red things are generally threat things. The others just depends. Then you've got 3 really well stuck in there little token things, which are almost like a pawn or something. I guess it's supposed to be a dude in a top hat, I guess. Anyway, so you've got a villain who's black. You got the orange guy who's the star, who the group collectively, however many players there are, collectively vote to how this guy moves around and what he does. So rather than everybody having their own independent thing, it's a group effort, which is why there's these black cubes. These black cubes are largely a large part of the game, in that for every decision made, unlike a choose your own adventure, imagine you're playing a choose your own adventure and your sister and your cousin are there and you're in the backseat of the car or whatever, and everybody's arguing about which decision to make before you flip the page. Well, that's what these black cubes are supposed to solve. Effectively, everybody gets dealt a certain number of black cubes at the start of the game for each scenario, and then throughout the course of the scenario, you get to vote in various times by spending some of your cubes to say, well, I'm going to spend 2 cubes, and everybody secretly says decides how many cubes they're going to do, then everybody reveals them at the same time, and whoever votes the same way with the most cubes, that's their choice. Now there's a couple other things that can happen, like if there's a skill test, if you will, like, the crook's getting away, the group has to spend collectively 6 black squares to catch up to him. Then if you don't do that, then other things happen. If you do that, different things happen. At the end of the scenario, the winner is the one who spends the most black cubes if you got the good outcome, or the bad outcome is the person who spent the least black cubes. Why is that a thing? I don't really know. Moving on. So, in the box, it comes with an introductory scenario, which is the basically how to play, and then 3 other scenarios. I haven't played the other 3 scenarios. This one has been opened because I bought it at Dice Tower East, this is actually a review copy. If you ever watched the Dice Tower review of this game, it was not flattering, but I picked it up at the auction, or the flea market, I should say, for a very little amount of money, so I'm not sad about that because I wanted to check it out. So each adventure consists of the deck of cards, and honestly, this is the core of the game, by far. Now, the people who made this game are very proud of it. I know that because they say it about 50 times in this instruction manual. That they're really proud of it and how smart they are, I kid you not, and how brilliant writers they are, what brilliant writers they are, and how they are just amazing, and this game is amazing, and how they plan on making amazing expansions for it, and how there's very subtle and difficult clues all over the place, and even in the art, they say. Although I don't know why that would be the case. There's a total of 3 scenarios plus the intro. They may have made an expansion for it, but I don't know who would buy it. Anyway, so how you play the game fundamentally is each person starts with a card. And so player 1 plays the back of the card, and then they play the front of the card, and then you do whatever the card says, and when that concludes, next person does whatever card you're directed to, very much like taking turns reading what page comes next in a choose your own adventure book. Rather than pages in the book, they chose cards. That's fine. You know, I've got nothing against cards. It reminds me a lot of the actual choose your own adventure game that uses cards that came out recently. Good game, I recommend it. This one, I don't know what they were thinking. Okay, here's the thing. You play through this, for example, London, Whitechapel District. This is not really a spoiler, this is the intro. Some call this neighborhood hell. It is a maze of crowded and foul-smelling alleys. Unfortunately, for the less fortunate, this is home. There are prostitutes on every block, wretched as they call them, and never was a term more appropriate. Welcome to the East End. Welcome to the streets of Whitechapel. If you didn't know, these guys also made the Whitechapel game, and they are real proud of that too, because they talk about it a lot also in the rules. So, for some reason, they've got different categories of cards. As you see, they talk about the white pile versus the gray pile. Basically, there's cards that you're allowed to reference again and cards you're not allowed to reference again, I guess so that you have to remember what happened. This seems like such an artificial way of trying to create, okay, there's several mechanisms that are artificially trying to make this more difficult than it actually needs to be. One of them is this business with the different card colors, which corresponds to different locations on the board. You can see that's the trash bin location there. And then you've got a red location and an orange location for co-stars, which is the red and the stars. And yeah, so basically just different locations to put things and store cards. Does it matter in the long run? No, not in the least. Do the positions of the locations matter in the long run? You know, because I thought, oh, well, maybe it'll be like Stop Thief, if you ever played that game. Actually, a really fun game. I like that game a lot. Where positionally you have to map out, okay, where'd he go? What's he doing? Or, you know, Fury of Dracula, or any of those hidden movement, track down the bad guy games. No, this isn't that either. So, honestly, you don't even need the board. I know they're trying to make it, their idea was clear that they're trying to expand this into the future to many, many more adventures, and they figured this way they can have a genericized board. The problem is, you don't need it. You don't need the tokens, you don't need the board, you don't need the cubes. Part 2, where they try to make this more difficult, other than the locations, is they thought, hey, we'll only allow you to have a certain number of items, a la an inventory system, but we'll make it artificial based on whatever story it is, and even some of the characters in said stories will only be allowed to carry so many items. So like, let's say you need to give the key to the attic to the young girl so she'll unlock it for you. Great, but the little girl can only carry a key and a candle and nothing else. So if you want to give her the grandma's locket that protects her from something or other, well, that's too bad. She can only carry 2 things. That makes no sense. It's just artificial difficulty to cover for, in my opinion, pretty poor writing, despite what they think of themselves in the instruction manual. So, they've got this artificial restriction on inventory, which is based on which mission you play. It's not particularly, it's not a cardinal rule across all of them. It just depends on whatever. And in many cases, like this one, let me flip ahead, spoilers by the way, you are playing this guy, a Bobby. John Neal, the J Division Patrolman. He is the star of this tale, represented by the yellow pawn. Okay, well, yellow that is, then rather than orange. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so then they have this whole big rule on interjection, which basically just means stop this card, do the next card, and then come back to finish this card. I'm not sure why that mechanic exists outside of it saves them making some extra cards. So anyway, this is the equivalent of those really short pages in Choose Your Own Adventure books where you flip to it and there's like 4 sentences and it says, please return to page 79. So this is a mechanic, it's a choice. I don't know that it's a great one, but okay, whatever. So it gives you some details about him and you get to put it in a yellow pile face up. Oh good, so that means we get to refer to it again so we don't have to try and remember who we are, we can actually look at the card because you are the protagonist. Everybody is the same protagonist. And it says continue to move on to number 3. You always do the back of the card first. Look for the yellow precinct token, place it on block 1. Yellow tokens are outdoor locations, white or indoor, yep, no kidding. The Bethnal Green Police Station, Victoria Park Square, 9:51 a.m. John Neal won't be on duty until midnight for his night watch, but he's already arrived in the precinct. Lately, Bethnal Station has become his second home, and there is always someone to talk to, especially since his wife, Patricia, is really testing his patience, and they quarrel all the time. Moreover, tonight, there is an emergency in progress. A gigantic fire has broken out in the dry dock of Shadewell, and possibly will need all the help we can get. Place this card in the gray trash bin. So that means you're not allowed to refer to this card again. I don't know why you would want to, but they say clues are everywhere. And now go on to card 4. So the next person starts with card 4. There's nothing on the back. So you immediately start to the front. Surprised? The back of this card has no text. There aren't always instructions, but illustrations shouldn't be underestimated. So they're trying to tell you there's sometimes clues in the artwork of the cards, which, if you're going to make clues in the artwork of something, please make it so that you can actually see the artwork well. Those of us with not such terribly young eyes anymore struggle a little bit with that. And honestly, it's not very well printed as far as that goes. I know they're trying to make it look like wood burning style things or ink stamp type things, but it's not great. All right. Shadewell's dock on the north bank of the Thames has been ablaze for hours. It's not far from Bethnal, but it falls under the jurisdiction of K Division. And remember, you're J Division, so that's not yours, who are already busy supporting the firefighters. For now, no external help has been requested, even if it seems that the disaster is of enormous proportion and the flames are still raging despite the rescuers' effort. This card forces a choice, but interject card 5 first. Each player takes 1 black cube from their supply. Everyone reflects on the 2 possibilities. Read aloud the text between quotes that describes the difference between the left-hand choice and the right-hand. For some reason in this game, they chose to use those old left-hand, right-hand, Victorian age kind of symbols to indicate when there's a choice in one of 2 paths you can take. I did not encounter one where it's more than that yet, but we'll see how it goes. Who voted for the choice, majority votes, loses their black cubes, which goes back into the tray. Whoever doesn't vote for the winning choice keeps their black cubes, which I suppose is their way of trying to do balance so that if one person continues to not get their choices, by the end of the game, they'll have like 9 black cubes left, nobody else will have any, and they'll be able to vote however they want. All right, so they just explain how it votes, then you go back to card number 4. Vote for either I'm going there, my former colleagues may need my help. And then if so, go to card 7, or I'll leisurely stroll towards Brady Street and I'll have a drink at Britannia's before patrolling. Now, here's where the writing comes into question. So you're a patrolman, you just got to the office, your old section is having troubles, but they haven't called for help, and presumably they're somewhat competent, or they're not, who knows. But you can your only choices are either I'm going to go out of my jurisdiction, or I'm going to go get drunk before my shift. These are not the choices I would choose, which is another reason why, despite their heralding their writing is amazing, and maybe their argument would be, well, you are not this character. This character, John Neal, is apparently a drunkard who likes to get liquored up before he goes on his shift as a patrolman. Maybe so. But this is indicative of another problem this game has, which is forcing choices that aren't really choices. It's the old magician's choice, you know. Do you want what's behind the box, or do you want what's in my hand? And it's either the same thing or nothing in either case, and it's a false choice. There's no real, you're not really making a decision as much as it looks like you're making one. Or to put it another way, like in a lot of the Final Fantasy games or things like that, When something needs to happen, like spoiler, Final Fantasy VII, where Aerith gets clobbered by Sephiroth, it doesn't really matter what you do up until that point, it's going to happen. You can max her out all her stats and all that, or you can not play with her at all and have her be really weak. Either way, she's going down. So, plot, kind of the old plot rail, if you will, which it's a choose your own adventure. I get it. They all have to have that to a certain extent, but could they please not write it a little better? But anyway, okay, so let's say you're in the spirit of it and you're like, well, between going there and getting drunk, I guess I'll go get drunk. So move on to card 6. Move the yellow meeple to B and put the yellow pub token into play. Okay, in what way does this improve how the game plays? It does not. Nothing, you'll see. John Neal enters the Britannia's pub, his usual stop before and after work. So now you do in fact drink a lot. That would have been good information to have before they made you make that choice. As he's walking to the bar, he is distracted by an argument that is taking place at a secluded table next to the entrance. 2 women standing are yelling at each other while 2 others seated look at them dumbfounded. The noisiest one suddenly calms down, hastily puts on her coat and leaves the room with an uncertain step, dismissing those present by declaring that she cannot waste any more time because there is a carriage waiting for her outside. Neil recognizes the woman left standing. She is Emily Holland, one of the many wretched souls who live in the slums of Whitechapel. Okay, now, based on how this is written, it's not super clear which one is which, right? All you know for sure is that Emily Holland is the one that's left. You don't know what their argument was about, despite the fact that you could hear it, apparently. Anyway, so your choices are either better follow that restless woman or tell me what's going on, Emily. So let's say you know Emily and you couldn't care less about that woman. Everybody votes again with 1 black cube. And so you get to choose, and then let's say it's card 9 if you follow the woman, it's card 8 if you talk to Emily. So let's say, well, we'll talk to Emily. So that card goes away, and up to talk to Emily, card 8. The pawn moves to D. Okay, great. So he moved inside to go talk to Emily. Stupid Polly. That stupid woman keeps drinking away the money she needs to pay for a night's lodging. It's dangerous to walk around these streets at night, especially in her condition. But she doesn't care, stupid Polly. As the wretched is ranting... Okay, now, notice there's no, syntax associated with this. No paragraph markings, no quotation marks. Another problem throughout this game is just the actual structure of the writing is such that it's very difficult to tell whether it's supposed to be narrative sometimes or whether it's actually characters talking with each other, which in a game where it's all about dropping clues for making choices to get to something is just annoying. It makes it harder than it needs to be once again. Also, you've got that choice mechanic, like I said, the black cubes. Okay, that's great, whatever. Doesn't really do anything. Also, the map, again, you're laying out locations, which I suppose makes you feel like you've done something on the map, but it has no bearing on what choices you actually make or how you vote to make a choice. It's irrelevant. You already know where you are, whether it shows it on a map or not, because it says it on the top of the card. As the wretched is ranting to the policeman, she points out the window, through which Polly can be seen staggering across the street wrapped in that Ulster coat, too big and too elegant for her, with those showy glittery buttons. A carriage passes by her and slows to a stop 10 yards ahead. The woman stops to talk to the coachman, then takes a step forward but stumbles. Neil decides to leave the pub to get a better look. So here we're back on the plot rails. It should be a choice of, are you going to go get a better look or keep talking to Polly, or, just go actually, I don't know, maybe start your shift. Anyway, this gets discarded and you can't look at it again because it goes to the trash bin. And we're on to card 11. Abandoned Place. Now, a second ago, card 11 comes into play. So you're walking out into the street just ahead of the pub that you were just in talking to the woman. And now you're in an abandoned place, which I suppose would have been the street. And sure enough, Commercial Street. John Neal has never been a particularly snappy agent. He can't do anything but watch the carriage disappear into the dark. Who knows who was inside and what drives wealthy men to pay a couple of coins to take advantage of these wretched souls for a few moments. A great sadness grips his stomach. He thinks of his wife, of the icy distance between them lately. With a restless soul, John Neal resigns himself to heading towards Brady Street and beginning his normal rounds of patrols. But first, he needs to catch up on his drinking at Britannia's. Now go to card 14. No choice there. The Golden Meeple moves to wherever. The blood games begin. Bucks Row, 3:45 a.m. After scouting Brady Street, Whitechapel Road, Bakers Row, Thomas Street, and Queen Anne Street, John Neal takes Bucks Row. I should note that they bring up Whitechapel a lot in this game, just because they're trying to integrate it with their other game, which, okay, great. But it gets a little annoying how often it comes up. There's other parts of London besides Whitechapel. Halfway down the road, on the sidewalk in front of the warehouse stable door, the policeman sees a body on the ground. It is a woman lying on her back. She seems to be asleep. 2 more steps and John's breath catches in his throat. That ulster with the big shiny buttons, too big for such a tiny body. Another step and he steps on something. One of the buttons has come off. He picks it up and observes that the image of a woman on horseback, accompanied by a man, is carved on it. John is certain, even before bending over her, this woman has been killed. So this card is a check. To succeed, John Neal must have the alpha blue chit, otherwise the check is automatically missed. So whatever choice we made, it did not include getting the alpha blue chit, so we automatically miss it. And so if you miss it, it says, Agent Miser. I don't know who Agent Miser is or where Agent Miser has come from. Where is the ambulance? Her skirt is completely soaked in blood. All players receive 1 black token. Continue with 15 and read the neutral epilogue. Neutral epilogue. Polly was slaughtered by an unknown killer. John Neal will see that justice is just the beginning of his nightmare. It's not enough. Whoever contributed the least gains 1 point token and 1 black token. Whoever has the most black tokens wins. So the idea is if you didn't vote for a lot of the choices, presumably, then you win because this wasn't the direction you wanted to go. And you guess you were supposed to be right because it was a neutral or bad ending as opposed to the positive ending. Note, regardless of the neutral or positive ending, the lady's still dead. It just depends on how many clues you have to go on to the next thing. Continue with 16. In the box, you'll find a game with a board, 3 pawns, 60 cubes, 15 wind discs, 30 tokens, 64 chits, and 18 cardboard tiles. 3 decks of 72 cards. So each of the full adventures is 72 cards each. Yeah. And as you can see, they're neatly stored, like I said, down here. And mind you, that story, while linked to the future stories, isn't exactly the same, as this is now the horrible secret of the broken key, or the bloody nights of the beast. And this is just intro cards again, and then it actually gets started. Because you wipe the board out after the last one and start all again. See, in the country of Surrey, southwest of London, on a large estate where young Laura lived comfortably with her father, investigators found a secretly concealed diary bearing a bewildering chronicle. It seems that 2 years ago, the Backer family were leading a quiet life after the tragic and painful death of their mother Ingrid, which occurred at the end of a long and excruciating illness. The girl had managed to retain her smile, her joy of living and facing the future, thanks to the spontaneity and initiative of a young suitor. His good intentions earned him the approval of Dr. Anthony Backer, and he was officially betrothed to his beloved daughter. But one night, placed his card in the bin. Really good suggestion. Card 2. Laura is a young girl, sweet but resolute and determined, quiet and reserved. I guess she's demure, too. She has spent a lot of time praying and reading the Bible since her mother's death. She has a long, wavy dark hair, and a simple, natural beauty she is not fully aware of. Really? Really? I mean, I know Penny Dreadfuls were poorly written, but come on, people. Assign Alpha and whatever, Theta, I guess, to this card. Young Laura can never hold a red item and never more than 4 total. Because why? I don't know. Or Gamma, I guess. A gold chain around the neck with an elegant crucifix hanging from it, a gift from her deceased mother. And Blue Gamma, a certain amount of cash, some bills, and several coins. Continue with card 3. Dr. Backer. Anthony, Laura Backer's dear father. Dr. Backer is a former professor of medicine at the University of London, a federal institute founded in 1836 by merging London University and King's College. He left teaching to look after his wife, who was seriously ill with cholera. She passed away more than a year ago. He is a tall, thin man with an aquiline nose, Of course he has an aquiline nose. Everybody from that, okay. I assume that's a tribute to the old Sherlock Holmes stuff with like Basil Rathbone or, shoot, what's the guy who played Grand Moff Tarkin? Peter Cushing. All those guys were always described as having similar looks, aquiline noses and whatnot, and well-kept grizzled hair. He has kept a deep look and a perpetual frown, as if his mind is always stirred by memories and worries that he cannot or will not share. Assigned red alpha, gold alpha, and black alpha to this card. Dr. Backer can never have more than 3 items, and these are them. A Martini Henry trusty modern rifle, a walking stick, and a wooden case equipped with surgical tools. Kind of looks like Peter Cushing, honestly. Oh, and continue to 4. Oh man, there's a lot of this left. A strange accident. So, one begins to think back, why are we even here again? It was after 10 p.m. I was with, wait, so I guess somebody's talking. It was after 10 p.m. Who's talking? Card 4 comes into play. I guess it's Dr. Backer? It was after 10 p.m. I was with my father. So maybe it's the girl? They don't really say, do they? I repeat, really bad writing for how this is structured. So, you get the idea. So, now you kind of have the idea what I think of this game. The writing is pathetic. The lack of character names, the lack of indicators as to who's talking, when they're talking, quotation marks, pretty much any of the standard, literature type things one would use to indicate story. I mean, it doesn't have to be standard Modern Literature Association styling, of course. It could just as easily be something like, E.E. Cummings. And you can figure it out as long as there's some consistency with it. You can kind of get the hint as to how it's going. In fact, this game would be a lot more interesting if it was poetry. At least, then you could, anyway. So, this game frustrates me. It's very poorly done. The mechanics make no sense. And when I say they make no sense, they do make sense in the sense that there are things that you can do. You can set up the board, you can put out tokens. You can move the little meeple from one location to the next. Does it actually impact your decisions? No, it does not. The purpose of all the items. They tell you in the instructions that there's extra items, and some of them are relevant and some of them are not relevant. And if you don't have the right one, as you saw in the intro thing, if you don't have the blue alpha item, which is whatever, which they do so it doesn't reveal what item you should have if you didn't take that path, then you automatically fail a check later. Okay, so throughout it, that sort of thing can happen, which, much like a Choose Your Own Adventure book, back in the old days, or somewhat recently, it's like if you don't have the power converter or the longsword or whatever, please flip to page 33. It doesn't necessarily say you failed, it just becomes a different outcome. Yeah, so this game is really bad. I hesitate to even call it a game. If you're really interested, basically you can just plow through these cards like a Choose Your Own Adventure and kind of get the gist of it. But honestly, I'm not even interested enough to go all the way through them. I can see why the Dice Tower crew never unwrapped the other 2 adventures. It's just so poorly done. It's, wow. I can tell you, after I finish this video, I'm going to edit this, upload it, and throw this game in the trash. It's that bad. So anyway, please don't waste your money on this game. It is garbage. That said, if you like Choose Your Own Adventure style stories, there's a bunch of them out there that are really good. This isn't that. Don't be fooled. I like Victorian stuff, love Sherlock Holmes, go play Consulting Detective. Much better game, much better written. Map locations actually matter in that game. where you go for clues, looking in the newspaper. It's a really well done game. I strongly recommend it. Even the Baker Street version, where it's a roll and write, and you just have little cards that have the clues on it, and you go from location to location, clue-like, and look up different clues. Still better than this. Much better structured, actually makes sense. The board setup in this is pointless. It adds nothing to the game. The voting tokens add nothing to the game. It's just, and then the actual mysteries themselves are either on rails or just poorly written to the point where you're not clear who's in the room with you. People just start talking randomly, as you saw, only 5 cards in, that you're not sure where you're at versus who's talking, which sounds like a men in tights thing. But anyway, so there you have it. This game is terrible. I don't regret buying it because I think I paid like $2 for it because, the Dice Tower crew, I guess, felt bad for selling it to anybody. They just wanted it out of their inventory. I'm throwing it in the trash. And there you have it. Coming up soon will be much better games, I certainly hope. Such is the life when you pick things up off the shelf and try them out. I kind of knew this might not be awesome, but I had hopes because I love Victorian age stuff. I actually did a lot of literature stuff back in college of that era. So I was looking forward to it, which is probably another reason this game drives me nuts so badly. But regardless, I hope you really enjoyed this video, at least more than I enjoyed this game. I'm Ray, this has been TinyTableGames, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.